Hey you guys, so it's Miss Cowan here, and we're going to talk about manifest destiny. So last week, what you did was you were learning the map and you were answering some basic questions with the newsletter. But this week, what we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about what impact manifest destiny and westward expansion had on America. So this lecture is pretty deep. I want you to really think about what we're talking about here, and it's also a lot of foreshadowing for the Civil War. So we've already examined and looked at and discussed this picture, or this painting, I'm sorry, called American Progress. And think of progress, how progress is improvement and change, and how you see this angel, she's guiding people to move west. So manifest destiny, like what is it exactly? So if we think about what the words mean, manifest means something that's clear or obvious, and destiny means future. So, our manifest destiny would be the obvious future for America to possess the whole continent and to expand all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And this idea comes from John O'Sullivan, and he wrote in a newspaper, the New York Post, about how it is our manifest destiny, excuse me, to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent, which Providence has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty. So remember that America is a republic and people have freedom and they get to vote and have a say in government. And so we're calling this a great experiment because we were the first modern nation to do this since the Romans. And so it is our duty, according to Manifest Destiny, to spread this great experiment of government across the continent. All right, so trails going west. So when we think about westward expansion, you should be thinking of people with wagons going across the country. And so this shows us this map some different trails that people used. So the Mormon trek, notice how the Mormons are going to Salt Lake City, and the Mormons are a religious group and they're going west for religious freedom. People going to Oregon are going for farming. And there were stories about wheat growing 6 feet tall, like as tall as man, that there were pigs running about with like forks and knives sticking out of them ready to eat. So these very exaggerated tales about how rich the land was and how good life could be for a farmer in Oregon. California, so people go for gold. The gold rush, drew thousands of people to California, and so they're going over to the San Francisco area. And then Santa Fe Trail. So Santa Fe, New Mexico, there were rumors that people that could go there for trade would be able to get very rich. So different people are going to use different trails based on what they want for their future. So I want you to notice here that the population of Oregon is going to increase dramatically in the 1840s, like 1840s, 1850s, 1860s. I don't know if you can see the arrow right here, how it's going up, okay? And those are non-Indian population. Now, people are going west because it also was very romanticized, the idea and belief of moving west. And we're going to talk about that in the next unit. Romanticism is a style of literature and art where it's going to focus on the beauty and grandeur of things. And in this painting by Albert Bierstadt, it's called The Emigrants Crossing the Plains. It's really not showing the struggle people face going west. It's really just showing you the beauty of going west. And you can see the light, it's attracting the people. It looks very peaceful. The landscape is absolutely beautiful and breathtaking and different. And so Albert Bierstadt was part of the Hudson River School Artists Group. Now, the question is, what are the economic, social, and political reasons for Oregon's growth? So economics pretty easy. People are going to Oregon for land, right? The opportunity to farm. The social reason would be the opportunity to go and convert the Native Americans. Some of the first people to move to Oregon were missionaries. And the political reason is that originally Oregon was claimed by the United States and Britain. So as more Americans start traveling west, we're strengthening our claim over that land. Okay, so the next topic has to do with the Mormons. And so the first question says, why did the Mormons relocate to Utah? Well, they came for religious freedom. The Mormons had lived in New York and they had been persecuted for their religious beliefs because they were a different sect or section of Christianity that wasn't really accepted. Some of the people practice polygamy. That means having more than one wife. And so, people stereotype if one, couple families practice polygamy, well, then now, Mormons are deemed as like a bad religious group by others. And so they're going to be mistreated. And so the Mormons go and establish Salt Lake City around the Great Salt Lake. And Salt Lake City is one of the most beautiful cities in the United States today. And the Mormons had to work really hard to achieve that because when they arrived to Salt Lake City, it was a big dry basin. And the area was very dry. The soil was hard. They couldn't really plant crops successfully because of the land. So, what the Mormons did to modify the environment, which is your question, is they built dams, they flooded the area in order to plant crops. And so there's like the big lake nearby, so they built dams to try to get some of that water to float into, where they had their farming. The land was divided neatly for each family. And so you can kind of see in this picture how you have like rows for irrigation. And in the center of town is where they had their place of worship. This right here is an aerial view of Salt Lake City. And you can see how the same rows that we saw up here that were built for irrigation are now some of our major roads, like current day. But this was from 2011. But you can see how Salt Lake City is surrounded by mountains, and it's kind of, it's in like in a basin, like it's lower elevation. Okay, so another topic for westward expansion has to do with Texas. So Texas fights for independence in 1836. And like immediately, there were many people in Texas who wanted to be annexed or added into the United States. So the question is, why do you think that's the case? Well, for one, I want you to remember that many Texans were from the United States. So for them to just rejoin the United States, they'd be happy for that. Another reason is because Texas is an established nation. It has a secure economy. And Texas now has debt from the Texas Revolution. And if they rejoin the United States, they would get protection from Mexico. Because even though Texas gains independence, they still fear that Mexico will try to reinvade. But in 1836, Texas wasn't annexed. They wanted to be annexed, but it was something that didn't happen. So in 1844, one of the elections in the United States, you had James K. Polk running for president, and he was running against Henry Clay. Y'all remember Henry Clay? This is Henry Clay's third time to run for president. He is a Whig, the party that was established to oppose Andrew Jackson, because remember they said Andrew Jackson was like a king, and the Whigs was the name of a political party in England that opposed the King of England, and so that's why the Americans are using that term, Whigs, for their party to oppose Jackson, who acts like a king, or some people believe he acts like a king. So Henry Clay, notice how the question says identify the campaign strategies. So Henry Clay is saying that we need to protect American businesses. Okay, that's part of his platform. He feels like to protect American industry. You can see like right here on his poster on the right, it says protection of American industry. So Henry Clay is going to support tariffs to tax foreign goods. That would protect American businesses because it would make the American products cost less. And Henry Clay is against annexing Texas. You can see down here, he says union without Texas, because Henry Clay fears that this could cause a war with Mexico, which a lot of Americans don't want. And he also knows that Texas would be added as a slave state, and that would upset the balance of the Missouri Compromise, which Henry Clay came up with, I don't know if you recall, which did maintain a balance of free and slave states. However, Texas is below that 3630 line. Now, James K. Polk over here on the left, okay, I want you to notice he's a Democrat, so this is Jackson's party, or the party Andrew Jackson created, and he has the nickname Young Hickory. I don't know if you recall, Andrew Jackson, who was a super popular president, his nickname was Old Hickory. So James K. Polk is kind of running under, after Jackson years later, but appealing to Jackson's popularity, okay? And James K. Polk, in his campaign strategy, he is saying 54-40 or fight, okay? So if you look at this map right here, okay, this is Oregon that we ended up obtaining, okay? But all this land, all the way up to the 5440 line, was disputed. So England and America both claim this. So what Polk is saying is 5440 or fight. Like, we better get all of this land or we're going to end up fighting. Now, we didn't end up fighting. We ended up just writing a treaty in 1846, dividing the line right here at the 49th parallel, which we already had dividing the United States and British Canada. Another thing, so what Polk is advocating for is war in the situation. Also, Polk is calling himself the people's choice. Remember how Jackson said he wanted to appeal to the common man? Well, Polk is doing a similar strategy. And Polk really is an advocate for manifest destiny or westward expansion.